Have you ever noticed that some of your best ideas never made it past the conversation stage? Not because they were bad ideas, not because you lacked the ability, not because the timing was wrong, but because the moment you told someone about them, something happened. Something subtle and hard to name. The energy changed. A doubt crept in that was not there before. A comment landed that sounded supportive, but somehow deflated the whole thing. And the plan that had been alive and exciting inside your head suddenly felt a little smaller, a little less certain, a little harder to hold on to, and you went ahead and did something else, or nothing at all. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Because today, we are talking about one of the quietest and most underrated lessons in human psychology, the kind of lesson most people only learn after they have already lost something to it a few times. Why you should never tell anyone your plans until they are done. Now, before you say, that sounds a little paranoid, a little cold, a little like I am about to suggest you move to a cabin and communicate only through handwritten notes, relax. That is not where this is going. Nobody is telling you to become a mystery. Nobody is suggesting you stop talking to the people you love. This is something much simpler and much more practical than that. It is about understanding that certain things, certain dreams, certain decisions, certain plans are fragile before they are finished. They need protection before they need applause. And the most powerful thing you can do for them at the early stage is give them room to grow in private, before they have to survive the weight of other people's opinions. Carl Jung understood this, and by the end of this conversation, I think you're going to look back at a few things in your own life and finally understand what happened to them. But first, I want to ask you something specific. Drop this in the comments. Think of one plan or dream you shared with someone before it was done and watched it lose energy in the conversation. Not because they attacked it, maybe they barely said anything, but something about saying it out loud to that person at that moment took the fire out of it. What was the plan? What happened when you told them? Tell me below. Because what comes up in the comments on this one is going to be more interesting than almost anything I could say in this video. All right, let us get into it. The moment you say it out loud, something shifts. Here is the first thing to understand, and it is the one that surprises people most. The problem is not always the other person's reaction. Sometimes the problem is simply the act of saying it. Carl Jung wrote about what he called psychic energy, the internal drive that pushes a person toward a goal. Do not let the phrase throw you. What he was describing is something you have felt 100 times without having a name for it. That feeling of momentum. That quiet fire that builds inside you when a plan is forming and you have not told anyone yet. That private excitement that makes you lie awake at 2 in the morning thinking through the details. That energy is real, and it is doing something important. It is building pressure, building motivation, building the internal drive that makes people actually finish things. Here is what Jung observed. When you announce a plan before it is done, you release some of that energy into the room. Not all of it, but enough. The announcement produces a small social reward. People react. They ask questions. They respond to you as if the thing is already more real than it is. And something in your brain, the part that was building pressure toward the goal, registers that reward and relaxes a little. The drive dissipates slightly. The urgency softens. It is like letting a little air out of a tire. The tire still looks fine, but it does not ride the same way anymore. The dream is still there, but it has less push behind it than it did before the conversation. And sometimes that small reduction in momentum is exactly what stands between you and actually finishing the thing. A woman named Patricia learned this the hard way. 68 years old, retired nurse, always wanted to write a book about her 40 years of stories from hospital work. Funny ones, heartbreaking ones, the kind that still made her shake her head at how strange and beautiful people are in their worst moments. She told her family about it at Thanksgiving dinner, showed real excitement. They responded warmly. Her daughter said she would absolutely read it. Her son-in-law said someone should definitely write that book. And then Patricia went home. And for some reason she could not quite explain, she never started, not that week, not that month, not that year. The plan was still there, the desire was still there, but the urgency, that quiet pressure that had been building for years, had somehow bled out across the Thanksgiving table. 7 years later, she still has not written a word. The family did not kill the book, but the conversation came too early, and the small satisfaction of being seen as someone who was going to write a book did some of the work that actually writing the book was supposed to do. That is the first thing to understand. Announcing a plan feels like progress. It rarely is. Here is the second part, and this one is about the people in your life, the ones you love, the ones you tell first. When you share a plan that is still forming, you expose it to something it is not yet strong enough to handle. Other people's imagination. And here is the thing about other people's imagination. It is shaped entirely by their own life, their own history, their own fears and limits and sense of what is realistic for someone like you. So when you share a new plan with someone who loves you, and I want to be clear, this is not about bad people, it is about well-meaning people. What you get back is not an objective assessment of your idea. What you get back is their inner world projected onto your dream. If they are fearful, they project fear. If they gave up on something similar, they project their giving up. If they were hurt by a similar risk, they project their wound. And none of that is their fault. It is just how human beings work. We cannot help seeing new things through the lens of our own experience. But your new plan, still soft, still finding its shape, is not ready to carry all of that yet. Think of a seedling, a tiny plant that has just broken through the soil. At that stage, a cold wind can end it. Not a storm, a cold wind. Something that the same plant, 3 months later with real roots, would barely notice. Your plans are seedlings in their early stage, and the most common way they die is not being abandoned on purpose. It is being exposed to a cold wind too soon, a comment that was meant kindly, a doubt shared out of love, a question that landed at exactly the wrong moment, and the damage does not always look dramatic. The plant does not snap, it just stops growing forward with the same energy it had before. A man named Eliot understood this eventually. 71 years old, retired, always been handy. He decided quietly one winter that he was going to build a workshop in his backyard. A real one, proper tools, a good workbench, decent lighting. He was going to spend his retirement actually building things with his hands, furniture, small projects. The kind of craft he had always pushed aside when work and family demanded everything. Eliot made a decision, either by instinct or luck, that he has since described as one of the wisest things he ever did. He did not tell anyone. Not his wife right away, not his children, not his neighbor Roger, who had opinions about everything and gave them without being asked. Roger was the kind of man who once gave unsolicited advice about someone else's mailbox. The mailbox was fine. Eliot just started. Quietly. He did the research, bought the first tools, drew up a rough plan, started clearing the corner of the yard. 3 months later, his wife came outside on a Saturday morning and said, "What is happening out there?" And he showed her what was already half-built. She laughed and said it was wonderful. Roger eventually arrived with opinions. But by the time Roger's opinions showed up, the foundation was already poured, literally and figuratively. The plan was real enough to survive Roger. The roots had grown deep enough that the cold wind arrived too late to do any damage. That is the difference, not keeping secrets forever, just protecting the fragile stage long enough that the plan becomes real before it has to be defended. The most dangerous opinion about your dream is the one you hear before it has roots. The people who mean well are not always the problem. The timing is. Now I want to say something carefully, because this part matters. This is not about distrusting the people you love. It is not suggesting that your family is secretly hoping you fail. Almost all of the time, the people who hear your plans and respond in ways that deflate them are doing it out of genuine care. Are you sure that is realistic at this stage? That is someone who loves you and does not want you to be hurt. That sounds expensive. Have you thought about the cost? That is a practical person who worries about you. A lot of people try that. It is hard to make it work. That is someone who has seen failure and does not want you to go through it. Every single one of those responses is about risk, about what could go wrong, about the gap between the plan and the reality. And when a plan is just forming, it cannot survive that kind of scrutiny yet. Not because the scrutiny is wrong, but because the plan has not yet built up the evidence to answer it. Once the thing is done, once you have built the workshop, written the chapters, made the trip, finished the project, those questions have answers, real ones. The reality of what you did speaks louder than the speculation of what might go wrong. But in the early stage, the plan has no answers yet, only your conviction. And conviction, however real, is a thin shield against well-intentioned doubt. That is why the timing matters more than the people. Wait until the plan has roots. Show it then. Let people respond then. By that point, most of the doubt arrives too late to matter. Now let us be specific, because there are certain situations where silence is not just wise, it is essential. First, when the plan involves a decision that the people in your life have strong feelings about, and they always have strong feelings. Adult children have opinions about finances. Siblings have opinions about living arrangements. Friends have opinions about relationships. If the plan touches any of those territories, telling people before it is done means inviting a committee into a decision that belongs to you alone. There was a woman named Lorraine, 73, widowed. She decided she wanted to sell her house and move to a smaller town 3 states away where she had wonderful memories. Fresh start, new chapter. She told her 3 adult children before she had done anything concrete. Within 48 hours, 14 text messages, 2 lengthy phone calls, a family group chat that had not been used in 6 months suddenly lighting up, and her son appearing unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon. Her son drove 4 hours to appear on a Tuesday. That is love. That is also a lot of pressure on a plan that was 3 days old. Nobody was unkind. But Lorraine spent the next 3 months defending a plan she had not even started yet. By the time she had answered every concern, she had lost the joy of the whole thing entirely. She eventually did move, but it felt like a negotiated compromise rather than a decision that was entirely hers. The lesson: do not invite a committee before the decision is yours. Make the decision, begin the action, then let people know. Their concerns will still arrive, but by then you will have something real to stand behind. Second, when you are rebuilding after a hard season. If you have been through loss, illness, or any difficult chapter, and you are starting to find your footing and make new plans, protect those plans especially carefully. The people who love you may not be ready to see you moving forward as quickly as you actually are, and their not readiness can slow you down if you hand them your plans too early. This is not their failure. Healing is sometimes faster on the inside than it looks from the outside, and you do not owe anyone a progress report on your own recovery before you are ready to give one. So if not telling people is the advice, what do you do with all that excitement? Because it is real, and the urge to share it is real. You cannot just sit on it indefinitely. Here is what you do with it. You put it back into the work. Every time you feel the urge to tell someone, take that energy and do one thing toward the goal instead. Write one paragraph, make one phone call, send one email. That impulse to share is your excitement looking for somewhere to go. The wisest place to send it is back into the thing you are building. Here is the practical version. Write it down instead of saying it out loud. Keep a private note, paper, phone, wherever suits you. Tell the note. The note will not give you a well-meaning doubt you are not already having. It just holds the plan quietly. And holding it privately keeps the energy where it belongs. And when you feel absolutely bursting to tell someone, which will happen, find one person. 1. Someone with a proven track record of receiving your news without immediately pointing to the risk. Someone whose first response is curiosity rather than caution. Everyone has at least one person like that. Find yours. Tell that person. Nobody else until the thing is real. Here is what surprises people most when they actually start doing this. Keeping your plans quiet does not make the achievement feel smaller when it arrives. It makes it feel larger. Because there is something deeply satisfying, almost joyful in a way that is hard to describe, about finishing something that nobody knew you were working on and then simply showing the finished thing. No anticipation to manage, no ongoing committee of opinions to handle, no explaining yourself while the thing is only half built, just the finished thing, standing on its own, requiring no defense because it is already real. Let your results introduce you. Sit with that sentence for a moment. In a world where people announce everything, post updates on everything, and narrate the process of their goals as publicly as the goals themselves, there is something quietly powerful about the person who simply appears one day with something finished. No preview, no running commentary, no asking for permission while the thing is still fragile. Just, here it is. I made this. It is done. That person is harder to dismiss, harder to talk out of things, harder to redirect. Not because they became cold or secretive, because by the time anyone had the chance to offer an opinion, the thing that the opinion would have been about was already real. Be that person. Not because the people in your life do not deserve to share in your plans, but because your plans deserve the chance to become real before they have to survive a room. Not every seed needs an audience to grow. 2 things to carry with you from this conversation. The first, the most dangerous opinion about your dream is the one you hear before it has roots. Protect the early stage, let the roots grow in private. Show the world when it is ready to be seen. The second, announcing a plan feels like progress. Going back to your quiet and doing one more thing toward it actually is. Now, go back to the comment I asked you to drop at the beginning, the plan you shared too early that lost its life in the conversation. And ask yourself honestly, what would have happened if you had kept it a little longer? If you had let it get stronger before it had to survive the room? Tell me what you think below. And if there is something you are quietly working on right now, something you have been keeping to yourself, keep going. You do not have to tell anyone until it is done. Let your results introduce you. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.